Okay, so today I'm going to show you and remind you how to throw a cylinder on the wheel. What we're going for is a 6-inch cylinder with about a 3.5 inch opening, maybe 4 if your hands are bigger. And I'm starting with about 2 pounds of clay made into a ball. I'm going to make sure my wheel is not wet, maybe just damp, and I'm going to put that blob of clay in the center, and I'm going to jiggle it back and forth to make sure it's stuck down. I'm going to get that a little bit wet, and I'm going to turn the wheel on. Now, for these wheels at Inverhills, our wheels spin in 2 directions. For right-handed people, it will turn counterclockwise, and for left-handed people, it can spin clockwise. You have to make that decision right away and make sure that it's going counterclockwise if you're right-handed, which is the way I'm going to be demoing today. I got the clay wet, and I'm going to actually push the clay down to make sure it's stuck down to the wheel, and then I'm going to squeeze the clay up, and I'm going to get rid of the extra clay around it to make sure that bottom is centered and that collar of extra clay is gone. Now I'm going to push the clay back down with a rounded hand, keeping my left hand there to keep it from going out. Now, there's a couple ways that you could center the clay. One of them is to press from behind towards away from you, using this palm of your hand and your thumbs pressing down. So I'm pushing, and when my hands become still, I stop the momentum by easing my hands back towards myself and slowly releasing. Remember that if you release your hands quickly, you'll knock the clay off again. The other way that you can practice centering is by pushing your dominant hand into your non-dominant hand until the clay stops moving, and then slowly release. If you find a different way of centering the clay, that's fine too. Those are just 2 options, the options that I find work best for me. When I'm centering something larger, I usually will center it in this method here, while I think for many students the method of pushing away works just a little bit better, or works better more often. Okay, when I start making my cylinder, I like to start with a dome shape or rounded shape rather than a pointed shape, because then you have to pull the clay out so far it cracks sometimes. And I'm going to just simply have my arms braced on my legs. I'm as close to the wheel as I can get, and I press my thumbs in the top, and that's going to make a small divot. Now I'm going to push my thumbs in, and I kind of hold my thumbs together like this. Oh, made a heart. And I'm going to press downward, and I'm going to pull them apart to open it up. That's the start of my opening. Now it looks like this, but I need to open it just a little further to maximize the amount of clay that I can pull up. So I'm going to open that a little bit further, and I'm going to check the bottom with my needle tool to see the thickness is a 1/2 inch. And that's important because I want you to get in the habit of having that 1/2 inch to practice trimming on later projects. If I weren't going to trim, I would be able to start with less, like maybe a 1/4 of an inch, but in this case, I want the full 1/2 inch. I'm trying to use this as a headband. All right, now, the next step I have is to compress that bottom to make sure those particles are condensed and the bottom is nice and flattened before I pull up the clay. Pulling up the clay is going to be the next hardest thing. You need to stay in the back, and whether you are left-handed or right-handed, and if you're right-handed, your left hand should be on the inside, your right hand on the outside. It's your dominant hand. And you want to lean in, and I take this arm and I really kind of sandwich it down with my torso so that my hand isn't as liable to go forward. So my first pull, the hand is going to push in on the outside. The clay will have nowhere to go but up. It will meet up with my other hand and they will go up in a straight line. Notice how my hands move up in a straight line from the very bottom to the very top. And not just in a straight line, but kind of up and in. My inside hand has to be there for balance. It's like a clay sandwich, between your hands. Now, that was one way. I used my fingertips on that. This time I'm going to use the crook of my finger, and I'm just going to press in. And do you see how my hands are touching? I have my thumb that drapes around the outside. The thumb isn't pulling clay. It's there to stabilize my other hand. If I were left-handed, the wheel would be spinning in the other direction, and my right hand would be on the inside, and my dominant hand, the left hand, would be on the other side. Bottom, and I will just make like a little cutout there, and again, I'm using my fingertips this time, and my hands are moving up in a straight line from the very bottom to the top, and they're staying underneath that initial line. All the way from the bottom, all the way up to the top. And when I get to the top, I slowly release my hands and recenter the lip. Recentering is just holding on and pressing down. Sometimes the lip is a little high and a little low, or a little thick and thin, and that's because students haven't pulled up in a straight line. They start here, and they slowly migrate over to this side, and it twists the clay and makes it uneven. And if it's really bad, you can't really fix it. It's like that to the bottom. But if it's just like a little bit, you can sometimes cut the lip. To do that, you want to hold on, take a needle tool, do not stab it in. Instead, simply let it rest on the surface, and the wheel will spin about 3 or 4 times, and that rim will come off in your hand, and then you can recenter that lip, and it will be flat. Now, the reason why that really helps is when we get to trimming, when you turn the pot over, if that lip isn't even, then it will be uneven when you turn it over, and when you try to center it to trim it, it will be off. I'm going to pull up one more time. And what I'm going for is a consistent wall from the very bottom to the very top. It doesn't seem like it should be so important, but it is. Otherwise, the bottom could be really heavy when you go to make cups. What we were kind of looking for is this shape here. That consistent wall from the very bottom to the top. And because it's the root for most of what we want to make on the wheel, besides bowls and plates. So to make a pitcher, you have to be able to make a cylinder. To be able to make jar or anything else, you start with a cylinder. And so this form is really important. Once you get the cylinder made, this is around 6 inches. I haven't measured it, but it looks like to be 6 inches. And I'm going to press my flat side of my red rib in, and have my other hand, my inside hand there for a balance of pressure to make sure that it's really even. I'm going to make sure that I get the water out of the inside. Remember that water would cause cracking. You don't want your bottom to crack. So I got the water out. I'm recentering that lip and making sure it's even. This is what you're going to be turning into me, but 2 of them. And once you have those 2, it'll get you started working on cups. Remember that since this is the root of what you want to make, when you get to cups, you'll start with a cylinder as well. And then you can use tools like your round rib to press out and increase the volume on the bottom around it. You could use the round side of your rib on the outside and make an interesting spot for a handle. And that cylinder will start to make a little bit more sense to you. The reason for it, the importance of it, and also how to then move forward and shape it into other things going forward. All right, thank you.